All right. Thank you all for joining real quick. So this is a trial to see what we can do on the virtual world for it. So obviously we have 4 coaches that came in for our coaches panel, and we'll do the questions as we had received them. So initially I'll ask you guys to just give a quick introduction of yourselves, and I'll start on my screen first with Scott. So who are you? How long have you been coaching, and who are you associated with?
My name is Scott McMichael. I've been coaching for 7 years, racing triathlon for 10. I'm the head coach and owner of Journey Multisport. We have both adult and youth triathlon teams.
Okay. Peter, you're next.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name's Peter Foster. I've been coaching 3 years through 10westtriathlon.com. I mostly do camps and clinics through the year, and then coach a few people one-on-one and focus in on novices and age groupers. And did my first triathlon in 1986.
Okay. Karen.
Karen Moser. I'm with TriLab Endurance, and I just got my coaching stuff back in last summer, so still getting started at it. But I did triathlons when I was a teenager. Had a friend ask me to do one back in like 2014, and since then I've been to UTI Worlds. I've been to USAT Nationals quite a few times. I just totally fell back in love with it again, and been doing it ever since.
And last but not least, Ben.
Hi, Ben Proco with TriFit XT. Been coaching since 2007. It's easier I've got past the number of years on my hands, so I don't know how many years that is anymore. And I did my first triathlon in 2001, started off with Buffalo Springs, or what is now Lubbock, and been enjoying it ever since. I do a lot of individualized coaching, put on a couple of races, and then I like to do a lot of metabolic testing, blood lactate testing, kind of stuff on that side. Maybe don't want the full-blown coaching.
Okay. Again, thank you all for joining, coming in, and obviously we're in a little bit different time overall. And I guess just a general question, based on us now being in a physical distancing mandate and having been for 6+ weeks now, and we'll see how long it lasts, at least in Harris County, we're for another 2 weeks. How does this impact your coaching style and your interaction with your clients?
I'll open it up. My focus has primarily been on the mental health of athletes. I mean, people are finding it very challenging if they've got to work from home, deal with kids, and all the rest of it. And all these tempting online classes, the rest of it. And my message is, whatever you're doing, just be okay with it. Your training might go backwards. Ideally, it stays the same. A few people, it might even improve. But whatever you're getting done, just be happy with it and be content with it. You don't have to be achieving great breakthroughs either in your triathlon world or in other worlds of, learning Swahili or reciting Shakespeare. I mean, just whatever you're doing, be content with it. And so I've been focusing on the mental aspect of my athletes. And yes, skin cancer people, don't go out in the sun without plenty of sunscreen. Took my
starting with a safety minute. Excellent.
Yeah, safety minute. Took half my ear off last week at the doctor's. Never mind. That's my bit.
All right. Others, as far as how it's impacted your coaching?
I guess I'll go. It's a lot of, like Peter said, there's a lot more working with what's between your athletes' ears as to kind of why they want to train and what makes them tick. Some of my athletes have gotten into Zwift racing a lot. They find it fun to compete, online for whatever it'd be. Probably most of the races end up being between 45 minutes and an hour. So I find ways to work that into their training plan. Some love the IMVR, Ironman virtual reality racing. So we kind of try to work that in. So it's a lot of talking to your people, letting them know that you're going to have days that you're just down mentally, and that's okay to miss a workout. It's getting a little better now that like Texas and Galveston have both been rescheduled, because there's that something out there for them to look forward to and train for. But most of my guys are professionals who are working from home probably for the first time in a long time, if not ever, and they have kids. So there's days that training takes way backseat to everything else that's going on in their life, and you just got to let them know, because most of them are type A athletes, that that's okay. Compartmentalize the day, put it behind them, and we'll keep moving forward. If we need to adjust, we'll adjust. But just get done what you can get done. Find the enjoyment in taking that hour to work off kind of the craziness that is life at the moment, and be a healthier, happier person because you have a little bit of endorphins running through your body.
Karen?
I think as I work with Daniel Lukes and Tim Wellman, and we just kind of took our Facebook page and we've done like a couple challenges on it, just trying to keep the community there, even though a lot of us have like different messenger groups and stuff like that. And kind of everything that's been said, it's just, letting you know it's okay. If you just want to go for a walk, go for a walk, but really emphasizing the mental health and just posting different things like, hey, post your workout today, just to kind of give me encouragement. Hey, I'm going to post this on the page, so let me go ahead and go do it, or or what'd you decide to do? And then about 4 weeks ago, just for fun, and it's took off like a banshee. And last week was the first weekend we decided not to do it. Was we did Happy Hour Friday, Zoom Happy Hour Friday, and I think the first one we had at least 20 people in our little community, if not more, like popping in and out. And so it's been nice, even though we're all kind of tired of the virtual world. When it's the only way you see each other, it's a nice way to get on and talk about your week, the stuff you do after you went for a run or after you would do after a bike ride. I think it's been really nice for our athletes to have that.
Yeah. Ben, how has the distancing impacted your coaching technique?
I've really had to learn what the athletes are available for now. It's kind of like when you get a new athlete, it's like they're all new again now, because so many of them have schedule changes. Some of them can do way more. Some of them, it's way less. So it's just a constant communication for them, leaving the door open for them to, offer that. Because sometimes, like everyone else has said, they have down times too. It's really been a roller coaster of emotions, and then trying to find what motivates them because of the races being pushed back or not knowing when they might even happen for a while. Some people need those baby steps to kind of keep motivated, a race here, race there. And, I've got several of my athletes to do some Zwift racing. I was even talking to a former athlete, or now someone that coaches. I saw them riding on Zwift. I sent them a message and I was like, hey, there's a race in 10 minutes. You want to come do it? And I went and I was kind of just being a domestique for her there, riding along with her. And she ended up having a blast. So sometimes it's just being able to introduce them to new things and just try it out. You have to learn some new things now, and then that'll just be in our arsenal for later. But yeah, it's definitely had a little bit of a change on the coaching there.
Yeah. General question all over. Not considering the last 6 weeks has focused so much on the virtual side of things, do you see now that if things ever get back to normal, that you're going to utilize virtual more in connecting to your clients, or you'd much rather get to the point where you're back to person and that's really what you want to do?
I would say back to person, but it is kind of nice to know that if you can't meet up, that this is an option, and it works. But I think most of us triathletes, one reason we all do is because we love the community and we love this way we all socialize with it. So I think definitely for us, it'll be back to meeting with them in person as much as we can.
I like the in-person stuff, but I see myself doing more virtual training. I've got athletes across the country, so by definition we're remote anyway, but I'm just seeing more of that. So in the Houston area, I love to do the swim camps and so forth, but overall I think the virtual training is going to be continue to be a big part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. We've been virtual, I guess, for a while, just because everybody has different. I mean, like I get on my bike at 4 a.m. during the week. That's just where I am with kids and life. So that during the week it's all virtual for me, anyways. And on the weekends with having preteens who are in competitive swim, a lot of my long rides are virtual too, and I have a lot of parents that are and athletes that are the same way. I'm looking forward to getting back to seeing my youth team face to face. It's kind of hard to keep tabs on 7 to 14-year-olds through the virtual world, but most of my adult athletes spend a lot of time on Zwift or on Ruby and running in the dark, because that's the time that they can get their runs in anyways. So although we do have our fair share of happy hours, which will be super nice to get back to, and chatting and telling big triathlon fish stories all the time, so that'd be awesome.
Yeah, just be another option out there. Some people like to have the face-to-face. Some people like to just be able to see someone on a screen here. And some people, honestly, it's just not, they like to get the plan and be able to email or text when they want to. So it's just another weapon in the arsenal. And this has really kind of opened up some things. I've even been trying to figure out how to use it a little bit more while doing a Zwift race. I have some athletes that do that, and I got worried about the video stream, the ability to run both platforms for that. But it's something I'd like to try, even while doing a Zwift race, or something to be able to communicate while racing.
She's still on the phone. There's 3 adults out there.
Question that came in from Facebook overall. So how much time do you suggest your athletes apply based on strength training, based on focused on building strength rather than individual swim, bike, run? Do you give them certain goals as far as what they need to spend either in the gym or working on Pilates or whatever it may be versus strength and activities?
Yeah, I'm a big one on the strength training, but not heavy weights and big gym stuff, more body weight and core exercises, 15 to 20 minutes every other day. But that's a big one with me, especially with the older athletes. Keeping up core strength is very important.
For me, it just depends on what my guys have available. If you're a member of like Lifetime, I'll put you under a squat rack, especially in the off season. Usually 2 to 3 times a week. In the off season, it's more during, like, if you're building for an Ironman, it's going to be far less, just because most people have hard times fitting in all the swim, bike, and run to begin with. But you can address a lot of different limiters, muscle imbalances. You can address most triathletes have weak and flexible hips. You can address that in the gym as well. So it really just depends on their time availability and what equipment they have available. So it's an individualized thing for my guys.
Yeah.
Ben?
With a lot of the lifting, it's a periodization approach. Sometimes they are going to be lifting more. Sometimes they are going to be lifting heavy. Right now, even for me personally, since I don't have a long distance race in the near future, I've been working with much heavier weights. And I could tell it for me, it actually negatively impacted my bike and run. Like I was feeling really crappy getting used to having the heavier weights. And I didn't just start off with heavy, I actually built up to it, which I'll do with other athletes. But there is a time and a place for it. And like Scott said, you're trying to get into an Ironman and get that volume, and it's really tough to have the weights in there to the same extent as when you're maybe in the off season. I mean, we don't have 40 hours, or most of us have 40 hours just to train. But there is a time in the year where there'll be higher weight, lower repetition, or where it would be less weight and more repetition. So it just depends on that time of year and the individual athlete. Someone who's in their 25 years old and a former CrossFit instructor is going to be different than someone who's in their 60s and hasn't done anything for a long time.
Karen, anything to add?
No, I think that covers. I mean, it really is. I take it from an individualized point. I have an athlete right now, and they don't have a ton of weights at home. Obviously, everybody's working out at home, but I also know what her weaknesses are, so we're going to focus on them. And there's a lot of, but just from overcoming my own personal injuries, I think it's very important, and I always carry it through the whole training. I know a lot of people tend to drop it like towards the end of getting to closer to your race, but I always at least keep one day in there, because you can always break it up into like little 10 minutes a day. So, I mean, 10 minutes a day, you can do it while you're watching TV at night if it's in, some at-home stuff that just keeps the mobility open, the stretching, keeps your core strong, because we use it in all three areas, so it's important.
Okay. Question on analytics. So in your training, obviously we can spend any amount of money on devices all across it, watches that will tell us everything more than probably we want to know about ourselves. How much a factor does analytics play in your training itself? And do you ever have to take some of your athletes and pull them away from it and saying, you really don't need to know that? Or do you need to encourage them, look, you need to pay attention to these things?
I work with people across the whole spectrum. Some of them are technology neophytes with not even a heart rate meter, all the way up to the super power data and all the rest of it. But even through all of that, the most important thing is monthly benchmarking that's simple to understand. Like, give me your 5K best time this month, give me your 500-yard swim best time, 40K time trial, whatever it is. So as long as those benchmarks are there and they're working towards them, that accommodates the really techie people with a lot of data, as well as the basic folks who just like to go on perceived exertion. So I can work across the spectrum, but I base it on monthly benchmarks that we can all understand.
Yeah, I like to use.
Oh, go ahead.
I geek out on the analytics a lot myself, but a lot of it's to get through and let the athletes know what's important to them. Because sometimes they'll see like a new metric, and that's just what the latest gadgets do. They want to spit out a new metric, and sometimes that metric doesn't really do anything for you. But I like to know the why. And then some of my athletes, I want to be able to tell them why if they want it. Some really don't want it. They just want to follow the plan. So I use a little bit more analytics, I would say, for biking, just because of what equipment I have and software I have for analyzing that. Like for swimming, it would be a little bit more doing something in person, and same thing with the running. There's a little bit more dynamics to it. But I try to. It's funny. They're either one way or the other. A lot of them, it's hard to find that athlete who's really just nice in the middle, like they don't overly obsessed about the analytics, because sometimes you're just having a bad day. And I mean, everything can say you can be able to do this, but then it just doesn't happen. But you didn't sleep well, too much stress, and that's okay. You gotta look past that and not just cry over being 5 watts under the power that you were shooting for on that particular workout. And I have some people that get like that. They'll go crazy because they cannot hold the power that they wanted in. But that happens. But then those are the same ones where I need to let them know, hey, if you're really feeling it on this particular workout, go ahead and go for it. Let's see where you're at. Don't, set your limit here. Maybe you're here, and then we're going to be able to break new ground. So I love the people who are analytical, the athletes that I can get, but sometimes they're too analytical, and then finding that nice middle ground between the two where you can be analytical, but then understand that you have good days, bad days, and sometimes there's times to go for it. And then sometimes where you just have to dial it back and say, hey, I'm just not having a great day. So, that's kind of my thing on some of the analytics there.
I have to.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I have to jump off just for a second because I have to get my kids set up real quick on their Zoom for their practice. So I'll be right back.
Okay, no worries.
So technology for me, I would love for all of my guys to have power meters, and I would love for all of them to, upload their data within like 30 seconds of finishing their workout. That'd be awesome. But like Ben said, I've had athletes I have athletes now that hate wearing a watch when they run and hate, they have a cat eye on their bike and that's all they use. You have to learn to deal with those people. And then I have engineers that spend 45 minutes, to a few hours on best bike split, trying to figure out what their bike split is going to be based off of, their wattage and whatever. And you have to remind them that, it's, trying to hit a number in a race or in a certain workout sometimes is kind of the thief of joy. You're going out, you set a new, personal best, whether it's an FTP test or whether it's a race or whatever, and you missed what you thought, you were going to calculate out at by like 3 watts. And you're like, well, damn, that's a failure of a workout, when in fact, it's not a failure of a workout. So what you have to do is like push the people that, want to live in how we raced in the early 90s, 80s, 70s with, racing everything about feel. You got to push them a little towards, the new data and what's, out there. And you got to pull back kind of the hardcore techie people a little bit to go, find some joy in racing that doesn't revolve around numbers. So.
Yeah. And full disclosure, I'm an engineer, but all I have is a cat eye on my bike at the moment. All right, and we have 10 minutes on this session, and I think with only this many people in it, it will cancel out, but we'll go a little bit farther, and then I'll end the recording and start the next one and go a little bit quicker. Nutrition, or I guess nutrition in general, and then we'll switch into the different events. So before we get into that, I did have one question of the usage of caffeine for events, be it, before specific ones, run, bike, or swim, or in general, the same for energy drinks. Opponents of it, do whatever works for you. Don't do that. Don't do it to your heart. Where do you guys land on the spectrum?
So caffeine for me is it's just another tool in the toolbox. Lots of people drink coffee in the morning. If you drink coffee in the morning, it helps get stuff flowing before a race, so that you don't have GI issues on course. Go for it. And then I actively encourage my guys to drink Coke or use caffeinated gels on the back half of like half Ironman and Ironman races. When you're depleted, the caffeine plus the simple sugar is a lot like rocket fuel. Granted, you have to warn them not to come off of the Coke because you'll crash, but it's one of those deals. You use it as a tool. If you need it, you need it. If you don't, you don't. Everybody has a different caffeine sensitivity. Everybody kind of has different, reactions to it. So use it throughout your training if you're going to use caffeinated gels, just so that you can, what your reaction on race day is going to be to it. And, use the Coke and, God forbid, the Red Bull sparingly on course. I don't know how anybody keeps Red Bull down on the back half of a 70.3 or 140 0.6, but you know, more power to you if you can. So
It's a talent. It's tough to do. I agree with Scott on. I used to never drink coffee, and then I just started moving to coffee to get things going in the morning. I really liked caffeine for before races. The problem is that it doesn't work as well for me anymore because I'm just constantly taking caffeine right now. So I lost the effects of kind of being off it. I think caffeine really helps if you can wean yourself off of it for a little while and then
Off that. Can you
put it back
turn
in
that
the
off,
race.
please?
What I would do is also with caffeine, it's something you're going to want to test in training. Don't just go out to a race and try that. That can be a big mistake. You know, and one of the things I just happened to pull some of the data up on here. I do have a metabolic analyzer, and I would watch out with like the Red Bulls, before a long distance race. If you go about 30 minutes or an hour before, I just pulled my data up here when I tested a whole bunch of different, I always test stuff on myself. And the amount of calories I burnt from carbohydrates an hour after having a Red Bull was 720, whereas at a fasted state, it was only at like 430. So there's almost a 300 calorie difference in just how much I was burning from carbohydrates by introducing that sugar into my system right before. Now, if you do it supposedly if you do it within like 10 minutes of the event, you're okay. But if you're like 30 minutes out, an hour, it can spike the insulin levels, and you'll really start burning that premium fuel early on. So I just, have people watch out for that. And again, I'm not going to tell someone just to make a dramatic change before someone, like, if that's what's been working for them, somehow they got by it with me, which usually they wouldn't. But I'm not going to go up to someone at the expo and say, hey, you shouldn't have that right before the event. That's not my athlete, because they're just going to freak out, and it's going to be more issues than what it's worth. But that's my thing with kind of the energy drink. And again, once you start kind of going like on the Cokes in the longer race, you want to keep that steady flow going. I remember my first Ironman, I thought I'd never taken a Coke during a race. And all of a sudden, I had all these GI issues. I didn't know what I was doing over a decade ago. And then I took some Coke, and it magically made things better. I know they say don't do things without trying it out, but I was already having some issues, and it was amazing and got me through the event, really feeling great that last 6-10 miles there. So the big thing I would take away is try it.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, my approach to nutrition, both in training and racing, is just focus on two things. One is comfort, and the other is familiarity. So whatever the athlete feels comfortable eating, that digests and feels good to them, and that they get familiar with it through the training. So when they show up on race day, they're just eating and drinking what they've been eating and drinking for the last 2 or 3 months. And then, you might have to do an emergency intervention, whether it's Coke or chicken soup or whatever might help you on the day. But so I don't have a big position on caffeine. People like it, great. Train with it, get comfortable with it. But comfort and familiarity is the key things I want people to work on.
Okay. And Karen, the question is, do you have any preference or suggestions for your athletes specifically around the use of caffeine or energy drinks during or before longer races?
Personally, I think it's a personal preference. I don't do a lot of caffeine. I've had athletes in the past, just because of their natural consumption of it, feel like they need it. And athletes that have kind of cut it out because they realize, well, during racing it doesn't work. So I think it's something you just have to personally figure out. So just the way I've worked it so far.
Okay. All right, and we have about 3 minutes, and then based on my experience, I'm expecting that I'm going to lose this. So what I'll do is everyone should have the second link. We'll switch to that, and then after one other question, we'll start focusing on a couple specifics for swim, bike, and run, although I was given a lot more questions for biking. as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Everyone has the second link.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll stop this and then I'll end the meeting and we'll start up the second one.
Sounds good.
All right. So we'll come back a little bit to some of the general questions, but let me get into the specific ones about the disciplines itself, and then we'll wrap up. Does anyone have an end time constraint itself? I appreciate your taking your time during dinner and others. So if there is, just let me know in advance.
Okay. Good.
All right, moving on to disciplines and kind of taking it in order itself. So if I look at the swim, so one of the issues right now is there's no pools to swim in, minus some personal pools, or maybe you're lucky enough to have an infinity pool, never-ending one. There are a few outdoor swim areas, but how do you improve your swim when you don't have a pool to train in?
I don't think anyone's improving the swim without a pool. You're literally treading water right now. Whatever your swim times were, your swim fitness, forget it. Do what you can with swim cords and dry land, but I don't think anyone's gaining any swim advantage at the moment. So I think people just need to get happy with the fact that when we get back to the pool, start slowly, build it up gradually again, and you'll be back where you were in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, totally agree. We're running a dryland challenge in our group just to try to keep people engaged. We give them videos of 30 different, movements, just to try to keep the motor pathways, fresh. And we kind of replaced a lot of swimming with strength training, with whatever you've got on hand. Like I have cords, different bands, and kettlebells. So I've been working with that, and everybody else, I got a list of my guys and what they have at house that they can use. So yeah, I have a few guys who bought a swim tether that have backyard pools, and they say about 15 minutes into a good session there, they said that their shoulders and their back is fried. So I don't know if that's helping or if it's hurting, but it's keeping them sane. So I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't swim in the water anymore. I haven't for several years. I have a Vasa trainer. That's all I'm on. And I can only do that so much. I have my phases that I train with. And pretty much after Lubbock last year, I would only get on there like once a week. And after pretty much October, I stopped doing any sort of thing on there. And then I jacked up my rib, coughing so hard in February that I couldn't get on it. So I went about all the way from October, and I just hopped on it in the beginning of April. And it has a power meter built into it. And this is just to kind of reassure everyone who's not swimming. My average power on there, I usually average about 40 or 50 watts while swimming on there. I was at 12 watts. That's all I could do. And over 10 minutes, my arms were killing me. And this is the beginning of April. Right now, I'm already back to 40 watts by getting on there twice a week. So, and that's my standard of how I know where I'm at swimming. That means I could probably go out and swim, and, I'd hope to God for a wetsuit, because that's the one thing that really helps out with the Vasa trainer is having a wetsuit so I don't have to kick. But I could probably still swim a 140 per 100 meters at that power. So the big thing is it's going to come back super quick. That was a massive amount of time that I took off all the way from pretty much June or July till the beginning of April. And it came back very quickly. It felt crappy at first, but it'll come back. So I think that'll be, kind of the main thing that people can take. What you can do a whole bunch of stuff to help supplement if that's what makes you feel good, and it's probably going to help some, but it'll come back. Unless you're someone who is swimming like a 105 or 110 per 100 meters, most of us are not that fast. So it's going to come back in 2 weeks, a month. You'll be back to where you were. So just don't stress about it. Do something else. Look for something else. Work more on strength. Work more on core. Those areas that you might have neglected before.
Karen?
I kind of just piggyback off it. It's saying not much different, not much else you can do right now besides just the different strength training and using bands and stuff. So we're just encouraging that and just, coming up with different workouts for the same thing as Scott said earlier, just based on all the athletes are different, what they have at home, what they have how much time they have, and what they have access to. So just, giving everybody as many options as we can and suggestions.
Is there a specific strength focus or training focus that would improve your swim? You can do. You had mentioned before, Ben, that you could, heavier weights now since you're not in season. Is there something now they could do that and could help them when they do get the chance to get back in the water?
My favorite is my lat pullovers. I lay on my back and go back here and I pull those things. I forgot how those work, and I hadn't swam since Waco. And my girlfriend, before all this happened, asked me to go swimming, and I had started doing those again. I thought I was going to drown. I could not. I was like, oh, forgot how good that. So I've really been encouraging that with our athletes, I think it's one of the best things for your back lat muscles for when you swim. It's amazing how much it helps build up those muscles. So when you're not
using a band or?
I eat weights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me, without naming a client, the top things your clients do during the swim, whether it's in training or actually during the triathlon, that just make you cringe?
Starting too fast.
Starting too fast?
Starting too fast on the swim. I watch guys, do that. Some people that are maybe around, maybe they should be swimming the same speed as me in a race, and they're in my age group, and then I watch them take off and go in front of me, which is nice. I get a little bit of a draft for a while, but it's something I see quite a bit, and it's a hard thing to catch on a device. It's not like a power meter where I can look at their power right away on the bike and be like, oh, you went too hard the first 3 minutes. It's really hard to see with some of the way the data comes out for the swim, but I would say just a huge portion do that. When I'm able to actually watch them, they just start off way too hard and burn matches, and then are just trying to play catch up the rest of the swim.
Yeah, for me, it's big on the same thing. It's my big thing with long course especially is don't burn matches in the water. It's just such a small portion of your day. You don't want to be digging into stores while you're in the water. I have probably 2 or 3 guys who can swim sub 110, for 100 meters for the whole 70.3. And for them, I'll tell them to jam it to go hard off the start line and then settle into a groove. But for most age group triathletes, it's your heart's already, on a 12 because it's the beginning of your goal race, and you don't need to be trying to get out at the front of the pack and get out there, kind of build into the swim and find your stroke. And the other thing is people who get really freaked out by contact in open water. It's not that it annoys me, it's just that it's just something that people refuse to work on. They refuse to get a group of people and go down to Twin Lakes or Longhorn and get used to kind of being shoulder to shoulder or have somebody tickle your feet for, a good 500 yards. It's how people end up with panic attacks in the water because they don't actually simulate the situations that you find yourself in a triathlon open water race. So
yeah, the gambit of being first to the buoy and going out fast is definitely reserved for your podium contenders and your nationals contenders, but for the rest of the folks, go easy, keep it steady on the swim. I'd agree with Scott and Ben on that one.
Karen, anything to add?
I think our big thing is I always try to make them work on their sighting, because the ones that get nervous and they are just either constantly sighting or taking forever to sight, not just looking and keep going. They're like, I think I saw it. No, let me do. You're just like, just keep going. So I think sighting's one of the big ones.
Okay. All right, moving on to the bike. and touching a little bit on nutrition as well, one of the questions we're asked is how do you prevent palate fatigue on long rides, whether it's 56, 112, one of your centuries itself? Do you see that as a problem, and how do you suggest they counteract it?
What fatigue?
Palate or eating.
Getting tired of eating the same thing forever.
Yeah.
I've never known that to be a problem.
I
Get it down here. I mean, I'll give them a goal.
I don't know.
300 to 600 calories an hour. Just chuck it down. It's a rolling buffet. I've never known palate. What do you call it? Palate fatigue.
Palate fatigue.
Never heard of that before. That's a good one.
I mean, if you want to have different stuff, just try that in training. Like I like hammer gel. I have the raspberry, and when they came out with the peanut butter chocolate, which tastes like a Reese's peanut butter cup in a hammer gel thing, like I could pretty much just take that the whole time. But yeah, you kind of get sick of whatever's on there. You just have to, you want to try different things. But I don't know. I think the major issue is people getting like GI distress around, like, I feel like in a Ironman, like around mile 80, it seems like things just happen around that distance, where it just gets tough. And it could either just be having to reduce the calories a little bit for the second, or, and I've seen this with a lot of people, I look at their power profiles, they're going too hard. And the first place the blood diverts from when you're going harder, it goes to your legs and it's moving it away from your stomach. So while that's not palate really fatigue, that is, and I don't think that's really gonna kill your Ironman, is like, oh, I'm bored of something. Well, eat it. You still need it. But if your stomach hurts, you're not going to. It's really impossible to take in. But I would say probably 50% of the people on their long ride, that's where I want them to mess up. Their long ride is they're just going too hard for the amount of calories they're taking in. I mean, I've joking around and done a 3-hour bike ride drinking beer and pizza on the trainer. But I'm going at an easy enough rate, like low zone 2, where it's like I can literally have those and not have stomach issues. But you start going at like a sprint distance try intensity and then try jamming down 300 calories, it's impossible. So a lot of it comes down to intensity for that is what I've seen.
For me, it's use your long ride as kind of, your test run for race day almost all the time. And there's so many good products out there right now with really light flavoring that you can find something that you can drink for 6 hours on a bicycle, 7 hours on a bicycle. You can find a gel that has a consistency that you can deal with. I find like goo is like super thick and is like a gut bomb every time I put it in my stomach. I prefer something that's a little more thin consistency wise than that. You just have to try different products, and if you have a coach, work with your coach to figure out what is out there that you can try. I had one athlete we went through just about every single sports drink known to man. She now races on lemon water and gets all of her salt and carbohydrates through gels and other foods. But that took almost 2/3 of an Ironman build to figure out what it is that wasn't going to upset her stomach and that she could drink and eat for an Ironman bike ride. I had another athlete that fueled off of Gatorade on course, and all of her food were peanut butter pretzels and jelly beans. So I tend to give my athletes. What's that?
Was she pregnant?
No, she went 11:11. So I mean, it's not like she went slow. But it's one of those things where your palate is yours. Don't let anybody. I mean, it's a whole lot easier to fuel with what's on course. Roll through a aid station, grab a Gatorade, throw it in your bottle or on your bike. That makes life a whole lot easier logistically, but figure out what it is that you can stomach for, and you're gonna have 6-hour bike rides in your training plan for the most part. So go test it out.
I always encourage whole foods, especially on the bike. So obviously it's way better, or not way better, excuse me. a lot easier on a bike. My little bento box, it's like a smorgasbord of picnic food in there. I break up my fig bars and my little waffles, and it just piece looks good right now. It's always worked for me, and whenever I have athletes that are complaining of stomach issues, I always encourage them, like ask them, and if they're doing gels, I usually suggest let's figure out a whole food that you can carry around. That's much easier for you to get that whole food down during the bike than it is during the run.
Okay. What do you find is the best way to train to improve your speed over long distance rides?
Well, the key to speed every time is your power intervals during the week, whether you're doing sprint, Olympic, or longer distance. You've got to train your body to pedal hard and fast, and you'll do that with your interval sessions in midweek. And then that will translate into performance on your longer rides. That's the sort of philosophy I'm following with my athletes. On the actual long ride itself, I'd rather people just focus on nice steady effort, maybe break it up for a few minutes, an hour, just to get out of the saddle, turn some big gears or whatever. But the speed work, you're going to have to do that in the week, and it'll come through.
Yeah, your biggest predictor of a performance for any distance is going to be like where your functional threshold power is, your FTP. And if you're wanting to get, that's going to pretty much immediately go over to your sprint distance and Olympic distance triathlon. You know, the person with a higher FTP, that's, you know, all things being equal, their aerodynamics, body weight, all that stuff, it's going to come down to the FTP. With the longer races, you have that other X factor of how much volume do they have to support that FTP that they have. I mean, you could have a guy with a 300 watt FTP, but if they've never ridden over 2 hours, they're only doing 3 hours a week on the bike, they're not going to be able to make a 112-mile bike, or they're going to have to significantly reduce their training. Personally, that's actually how I train. I haven't done a bike over 3 hours in years, since 2017. And when I do the Ironman, I have a fairly strong FTP, but I have to drop down my expectation of how fast I can go. I have to drop that much lower because I don't have the volume to support that kind of duration. Even though I have the FTP that says I can do it, I still have to back it down a little bit. So it's kind of a balancing act between having the threshold, like you said, about the powerful intervals, but then having the volume. And with those two things, that can translate over to the long course speed.
Yeah, for me, the one thing I tell my guys is I want consistency. You know, if you're consistently getting your workouts in, you know, minus a workout here or there, you're going to, you know, you're going to get your volume in. You're going to, you know, get your interval days in, and all together you're going to end up getting a faster bike. You can't go out and, you know, miss 2-3 days a week, maybe miss a long ride every other week and expect for your bike to get faster. You also can't go out and ride one speed every day of the week and expect your bike to get faster. You know, find a coach or a plan that you feel makes sense. Stick to it and be consistent in sticking to it, and I promise that your bike is going to go faster. So.
Karen, anything to add?
I think they covered it.
Okay. Then I guess on the longer distance bikes, one of the other questions that we're asking, Karen, I'll start with you, is do you keep a constant cadence, or do you mix it up at different ones, focusing on keeping the same power for longer rides?
For like a longer ride, I change it up. I encourage my athletes to change it up just because you don't know what the weather's going to throw at you. So you're not, I mean, you hope for an overall average that you know that they're shooting for, but also just to keep your legs going. It's always have them say, you know, work on their higher cadence and even lower cadence, especially around in our lovely flatland where a lower cadence might help pretend they're on a hill. So definitely throwing in, even in a race though, just to keep your legs it's something different. And so they're moving and
Yeah, no, as far as cadence goes for me, it's as long as you're over 80 in general, I'm cool with it. You know, if you're going to go out and ride for 4.5, 5, 6, however long you deem a long ride to be, and you need to switch it up, go for it. Just as long as you're kind of still hitting the metrics that we identify as key metrics, you know, as long as you keep your cadence ideally over 80, I have zero issue with going 80, 85, 95, 100. It doesn't, I mean, you know, whatever keeps you entertained while you're out there for a long bike ride, it keeps you entertained. So.
Peter or Ben?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ben.
I've done quite a bit with cadence, and I rode a CompuTrainer for years where in erg mode, and I just got set into one cadence, and I noticed how not having any range in my, like riding 90 RPMs constantly made shifting an issue. Because whenever you're shifting gears, you're moving about 10 RPMs one way or the other, depending if you're going up or down. So I think varying it some in training is a smart thing to do so you are prepared for those situations. And then one of the interesting testing data things I found, I've tested at various cadences, like the metabolic efficiency for myself and a few other athletes. And it's really interesting to see how it changes at different cadences. Like one athlete, I had him, I wanted him doing a 70.3, never going over 90 RPMs. Because once they hit like 95, or I didn't test at 95, but when we tested 100 RPMs, they started burning way more calories. So just like think of your car has more horsepower at the higher RPMs, but it burns way more gas. So this athlete, I told them to try to keep that cadence between 80 and 90. So when they were getting ready to like shift gears, if they wanted to go into a bigger gear, they'd get up to 90 RPMs, but they would not go past that, and then they'll make that shift. It goes back down to 80 RPMs. So that was kind of an eye opener, and it's a little bit different for every person. It kind of starts I think the biggest trend I've seen is on crank length, where I have some people on like 175 cranks, whereas I have 155 crank length arms. And so my cadence tends to be a little bit higher with the same metabolic cost. So that was just something interesting I saw, especially for your half Ironman and Ironman. That's going to matter. Short distance doesn't really matter. Whatever gets the power out there, you don't care about calories for a sprint triathlon. If you're running out of calories in an hour, you weren't eating the past 3 days.
Yeah. So my take on it is Dr. Fauci has done more for cycle training than anyone at the moment with his flatten the curve philosophy, right? And that's what I want people to do, to flatten their power curve over a hilly course, so they're not overworking the uphills and going too easy on the downhills. So shifting the cadence and shifting the workload on the legs so that the power curve is flattened over a hilly course. So thank you, Dr. Fauci. You brought it to life. Yeah, flattening the power curve on long courses, using cadence as a tool there, and gear shifting up and over the hills.
And last bike question. So it seems every time you get in the pool, or almost every time, you're going to focus on drills. Some part of it is not just putting in laps. You'll do some drills, but frankly, not so much on biking. You get on a bike and you go to do it. But Peter, you had mentioned, during the week you do that. So question for each of you: what is your favorite bike drill to assign to your clients?
You mean like the technical technique drill?
Yes, either a technique drill or put in intervals, or whichever it is, something you want them to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, there's no end of creative intervals and pyramids and hard, easy, fartlek type of things. Everything you do on a run workout, you can do on a bike, just in terms of designing the intervals. I'm a bit clueless as far as cycling technique goes. I mean, other than single leg drills, You know, you're gonna have to. Somebody else could probably better answer that. So, in terms of laying out work and intervals, fine. But the cycling technique, that's not a great strength of mine. I'll listen into the other guys.
I think when it comes to drills, like on a bike, like intervals, those are important for everybody, but then it also becomes individualized on where your athlete's focus is. Whenever I'm out, especially with newer athletes that are still getting comfortable on the bike, or they might be even new to clip-ins, I always like to go find cul-de-sacs or some of the roundabouts around us and make them practice going in a circle just to practice their cornering, because it seems like a lot of triathletes that are, especially when they're new to the bike, man, they'll drop down to like 8 miles an hour when they're making those especially those left and right hand turns. So I do encourage people when they're out riding, even if it's, especially once they're long rides and they're not really out doing different intervals and stuff, that, you're out for your long ride, take a few minutes, go practice, and practice going both ways too. So that's a big thing I like to encourage.
Yeah, I like my athletes to have if it's an ideal situation, I love that they have a mountain bike so they can do the brick house triathlon. No, just kidding. I think it's great to. I think it's great
that part out.
I like I said, I never do anything outside, but the only bike I really ride outside is my mountain bike. One of the things we did at some of our clinics was we would practice bike handling, but we do it in the grass, because we always have people fall over. And if you have the mercy of the grass, it's a little bit nicer. We do figure 8 drills, and you very quickly find out which way you don't like to turn. Like me, I'm scared to death to turn right. It's crazy. I'll turn left with no problem, but right, my body just cannot stand doing that. And then we even practice hopping over just laying out a really small board and getting the wheels to hop over that, because you just honestly never know when a water bottle falls and there's not actually turning and putting your wheel on it might be a bad thing, and just being able to do that slight bunny hop could save you a ton of road rash. But that's kind of the technique stuff I want is more handling related. As far as like single leg drills and some other stuff, the research is very like back and forth on some of the benefits. It's like, if someone wants to do that, go ahead. I've done it for a while before, and I never saw it even improve my leg balance or anything like that. So maybe some high cadence drills are good to throw in once in a while. But that's an individual thing as well. But I think all triathletes could honestly benefit from bike handling, yes, from what I've seen out on the course. So I've been there with you, Scott. We're almost someone took that. I remember that. It was wet too. That was scary.
That was scary. That was a good day.
Doing the side cross, they're getting ready. But bike handling, I think, would be, man, if I could just feel safer on a race, I think that's going to benefit everyone. It benefits you and the people around you.
Yeah, no doubt. I think from more of my experience, guys, I don't do a whole lot of drills. Like Ben said, single leg is whatever. When I get newer guys, I will go out and we will have bike handling classes, like on how to corner, how to, especially runners. It's like, you run the tangents as a runner, cycle the tangents as a cyclist. It's really pretty simple. And, we'll go out, lean your shoulder into a guy on a bike just to see, if they can deal with it. We'll go out and we'll pick up tennis balls off of buckets while we're still on the bike. A lot of the stuff that we do with our youth team, getting them ready to race, because if you've watched a youth triathlon race with bicycles, it's kind of the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I'll do that with guys who are new to cycling. And my short course guys, I'll have them run transitions like we do with the youth team. Get them used to flying mounts in the grass, flying dismounts in the grass. Again, stand at the mount dismount line at a 70.3 or a local sprint, and you'll see at least one person almost die. It's kind of the biggest bleep show I've seen in a long time. So you just have to, teach the people this is the safe way to get on and off your bike in a triathlon, especially with new athletes. When you get the experienced athletes, is like, this is the quickest way to safely get on and off your bike in a triathlon. So we run a few of those. We'll run a few transition clinics for adults as well, just so that your athletes can show up and you can run through it, and we can all laugh at each other trying to get on and off our bicycles. And so but again, consistent drills. Like if you're going to run something, you can't really do anything on the trainer besides ride intervals. So that's kind of my position on it.
Actually, Chris, if I could add something. On the cycling skills angle, the thing I've found, a lot of athletes come into the sport and they're not used to just going out and riding in the country, or, as I grew up, I basically just sort of wheeled out the door and go and find a route and cycle it. And there are a lot of people who come to the sport with no sort of concept or experience of being out on an open road, looking at a map and deciding, okay, I'm going to chart out a 40-mile route here. What are the safe roads, which have got shoulders? So that sort of stuff, I'll help some of the novices with, or those who are unfamiliar with cycling, because there's some horrific road conditions out on the west side of town, Katy, Fulshire, wherever. You've got to pick your routes carefully if you want to be safe. So I'd add that to the mix there.
Okay. And we are running out of time, so if I delve too much into the run, I think it'll be that. And from seeing some of the comments, I saw some that, what do they like? They like to swim, they like the bike, they like to swim, and there are a few people out there that like to run. So me being one of the ones, I'll avoid the run for this as well. So in the last few minutes, we have any last comments or general, and just in general, thank you so much for taking your time. I appreciate it. I took your dinner as well with it, but I do appreciate you giving your feedback and expertise. But any last comments you want to add?
Stay healthy and happy. Let's look forward to getting back to the full schedule.
Yep. Yeah. Hopefully the races will stop being canceled.
Yeah, find what you enjoy. Find that niche that keeps you going forward. Your enjoyment for the sport. Everyone has a different story, and kind of reflect back on what your story was getting into this, and then this is just another chapter in that that story that you're writing the experience here. So yeah, just find what works, whether it's doing online races or just anything else. Just find what works for you. If it means not doing one of the sports like swimming right now, just be okay with that.
I think the biggest thing I tell people is just to remember that it's not just about the race, even though of course we all love the race, that it's just like, it's about the journey of getting there. I mean, I did Ironman Texas 2 years ago now, and as much as I loved the day of the race and doing the race and all my training days that led up to, training with all my friends, I have just as good, if not better, memories from all of that too. I think it's just reminding, and unfortunately right now we're just on a little bit of a different journey, reminding our athletes that it's all part of the journey and we all get to the end point, and just to enjoy this too. And it's different way of training right now.
Yeah, for me, it's just, remember that, it's really easy to get lost in kind of, I guess, the minutia of what it is to train for triathlon, especially long distance triathlon. But just remember, this is supposed to be fun. None of us are getting paid to race. So it's not our job. It's, as athletes, it's not your job to be an athlete. You have other jobs and priorities that should come before, being a triathlete. And for those of you that end up hiring a coach, just remember that we work for you. So it's one of those things that we're supposed to help you get better, and you pay us to do that. The second that people stop, you stop having fun and enjoying the process that a coach is laying out for you, is the time that you need to talk to your coach about, what it is going forward. And I've been that coach. I've had that call come to me. I think we've all had that call come to us. But you know, people lose track of the fact that, you know, we're employed by you. So just keep that in mind.
Excellent. Karen, Scott, Peter, Ben, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, Peter Brown will edit this coming in, and then hopefully I'll turn it around and get it a little bit quicker on the website to do it. And I will send bios to each of you to make sure I'm saying what you want to be saying on that as well. But again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
See ya. Thanks.